Finally got a video of this happening. The whole reason I have this car is because I'm trying to fix this issue. It's my dad's car. He always tells me this is what happens when he starts it. But I've never gotten it to occur. But this morning, sure enough, I started the car and after a few seconds it beeped at me and power says steering fault. And I've got no steering. And he usually says there's a service advanced track warning at the same time. But what's weird is I don't have that. I'm just seeing that. So let's turn it off and turn it back on. Ooh, right away. Wow. This thing might actually be a donezo.
First step in the procedure is to lock the steering wheel in forward position. Just put a plastic bucket under it and raise the seat a little bit just to hold it there. I think it's mostly so that someone doesn't walk up and spin it and blow out the clock spring. Done that before. And then you got to take off the lower steering shaft cover. It's got little plastic hand nuts on there. Remove the cover and then you got to take out the one bolt that's here. I believe it's a 10 millimeter. That's the lower shaft nut or bolt. Procedure specifies that you replace it. I would do that if you can. Then you want to remove the lower shaft seal. Actually, this goes around the rag and pinion itself, I think. You see it actually, that's the outside of the car, that's the inside of the car. And you have to pull the lower steering shaft off of it, and you see it plunges like this. And you just pull it off and put it to the side like that. I wouldn't let it fall off. That would probably be bad. And then I pull up this, and then I reached in there and just yanked this out. I believe it just kind of fits in. It's got little metal tabs on the back. The little ones are a 7 millimeter. Ugh. Ugh. Did I say the big ones are a 10?
You didn't say.
Well, they are. Wow. Gotta have the tool. You have one of these?
Maybe.
Maybe's the wrong answer.
everything's so much better.
I think you have something similar, but probably not exactly like that.
Is it a flathead screwdriver?
No.
Is it two flathead screwdrivers together?
Oh, that's it. Did you make that?
No. I'm saying it's not the same as the actual tool. Ugh.
So what are you removing right now?
I think it calls them the splash shields. It even wants us to remove the lower ones on both sides, but I'm just way away from what we're working on, so I'm going to leave those for now. I seem to remember there's one stupid one hidden back here. Yes. Why? Oh, is there another? Yep. Yep. Maybe that's why it said take off the lower shields. Ooh, it's wet. It's lovely. Here's the U-bracket for the exhaust. And then there's these two little bracket bolts there. I'm going to torch these guys. That goes down to here. This one's shot, so I'm replacing it. I'm going to take those exhaust bolts off up there as well to get it down, but you won't need to do those for just the rack. Here, why don't you grab that? I'll start torching it. Thank you. Whoops.
quench it. Smells great, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if it was necessary to torch that, but I don't want to risk it. These are not that easy to get to. Living in Michigan, I'm just anything I question,
Yeah.
give it the blue wrench.
The blue wrench.
Wish I had oxyacetylene. One of these you gotta be a little careful about because I can see the wires of the power steering not too far away, which is interesting because there is a shield, but the shield is not covering the entire rack. I can see the wires just a few inches away from the exhaust here, but the cats are down there, so that's what's really hot. See, I'm using a 15 deep well impact with a, I don't know, like a 10-inch Harbor Freight wobble impact extension. On impact, obviously. Hold your breath. Fantastic. I will likely replace these. Okay, now let's take a look at these little guys. I really don't know if these are going to be bad or not, but I didn't feel them budging with a little torque, so I'm going to be extra careful. I don't know what's on the back side of this. I guess I could feel up in there, but seems way unnecessary. I tried to avoid it. I failed. So I can get on top of it a little bit. Oh. Unprepared. They're 10 millimeters, but they're not a very tight 10 millimeter, unfortunately.
Sorry.
What?
Touched you.
Bro, not now.
Messed it up.
Jeez, so weird. See what I mean? I don't like it. Don't like it.
You think it's gonna break?
Strip out. That would suck. Oh yeah, she was crusty. Didn't break. Alrighty. Yeah, it's still short. Short guy. Alright, so I got those bolts undone there, the little guys. And then I got the U-clamp bolts done. Now we're going to try to pull that out. Not really sure how this is going to go. Great angle. But anyways, I'll fight that. But to get it out, I used a 10mm, then a swivel, and an extension. 2 extensions to be exact. I didn't use an impact, but it'd be good if you had an impact and a wobble extension or some wobble sockets. I do not have those handy. Alright, now you're going to take off the 2 bolts that hold on the shield. You can see one right there. I'll zoom out so you can see. And then there's another I already got out, which is there. Whoa! Alright. Hope you can see that. I can't really. They are an 8mm. I'll try to get this back one now, and then take that out, and then undo the electrical connectors. Alright, trying to get the 3rd connector. Okay, that's how that gets. Just like it looks like it's another just push the pin and pull out. So were the other 2. See them? 1, 2. I just couldn't see the 3rd. Using the camera to my advantage. Alright, there's 2 connectors you gotta pull off the power steering. Not 3. There's 2. And they got that big fat one there. And that guy there. They were both just simple push the pin and pull it out. There's a 3rd, but it goes right to the rack. So this guy here, I unplugged it, but it goes right into itself. So there's no point. There's also a wiring retainer. See that guy? You gotta pull that off, mount it up in here. Not a big deal.
Rolling.
Alright, so I'll be clear. In this order, you've got to take out the roll restrictor bolt, which is the bolt that's up here. You could probably take that one out too, but I've said take this one out because it goes into the subframe. It's a 15mm. It wasn't that tough. And then support the rear of the subframe with a jack, like I'm doing right here. Supported. And then you're going to take out the 4 bolts that bolt into the I can't remember what it calls it. Anyways, there's 4 subframe bolts back here, and there's 2 nuts. The 4 bolts are a 15mm, and the big nuts are a 21. I'm going to take out this side first. There's a washer on that guy. Come over to the other side now. All right. I had to take one of these screws out to help pull the shield back. That's probably why it said to pull it off earlier. Make sure you don't pull it all the way out. I'm only hitting it with the impact to break it loose. All right, here we go. Okay. Got it. Take it off a few more threads. There we go. The nut's at the bottom of the threads now. Here, I'll take that. Ooh, I don't know if that can be seen. Nope. Screw that. All right, we'll get the other one now. These are also a 21. Okay. That scares you, doesn't it? Probably would be a better idea to use a breaker bar on these. I don't have one here, unfortunately. Alright, that one's good too. And the reason we're loosening them is because the whole subframe, to pull this rack out, it drops it like that. So the whole thing goes down like that, and then you unbolt it and you slide the rack out. You're not actually dropping the subframe. This is just to show you where the front subframe nut is, or what it looks like. It's you see it's a kind of rusty. I hear these can be problematic on higher mileage cars. This is 120,000 miles on a Michigan car, 2010, and it's 7 years old now. So that's about what that looks like. That could give a lot more trouble in the future, but with the impact and the PP blaster, it didn't put up that much of a fight. It's just here next to the radiator. You just pull this flat back like that. We're gonna drop the rear of the subframe down now. I'm gonna try to stay clear of it in case something goes wrong. It needs to be down 3. The rear goes down 3 inches. I'm gonna drop a little bit. I might measure it to make sure we don't drop it too far. I don't want to know what would happen if we did that. Start to loosen it up here. All right, got it down some. Oh. Not wanting to come any more than that. I might have one of these front bolts too tight, I'm not sure. I don't want to just loosen them up at will though. Oh, very interesting. Okay. So the subframe actually goes into, yeah, those big nuts we took out. There's these huge studs that come out of the body here. You won't be able to see them from there. That go into the rear isolators. Hope we're not binding on those. It's only down about 1 inch right now. Stay clear of it. Let me see if I can loosen one of those front bolts up a little more. I'm not sure if that's what's causing it. This is one of those things I've just never wanted to do. Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably loosen that guy up a little more. See if I can get in here and find these bolts. Can you grab that flashlight over there? Big one. It's next to the impact. So I can see one from out here. See that one right there? Now, oh, the big guy. Got them both. Okay, I'll take this one for now, see if you can get that one working. And then, oh, there's the other. Sorry, mind the vertical video. There's the other behind it. Behind that electrical wire there. Right there. Alright, so I don't have a big pry bar, so this is what I'm doing. I just lower the jack, like, so it has about, I don't know, whatever more you have to go. Don't just pull the jack out. And let it dangle there, the rear of the subframe. And then I'm taking a 2x4 and just putting it in between the frame and the subframe and just prying it like that. Just give it a little nudge. The problem is it's stuck on the studs of the body. Let's see how we're doing. Yep, doing all right. Let's see. We're at the full 6 inches now. No, not quite, but doing all right. I'll give it a little bit more. The problem is the inner bolt here. I can't get to it really. I can get a wrench on it, but I can't turn it. So I'm trying to find a good way to do this. Let's try it again. Yeah, that's better. If I can just get it loose. I don't have a lot of tools with me, unfortunately. Well, yeah, I see. We'll go back. We'll go from back here. They're not particularly tight. They're in rubber. Okay, it's coming. All right, let's get the ratchet. See if I can get this in here somehow. These are 15 millimeters. I didn't say that already. Maybe with an extension. Gotta make sure there's space above the ratchet so it doesn't get itself caught. Don't want to do that in here. Been there. All right, let's pop it out. Okay, here it is. Oops. Oh, jeez, clumsy. It's got a washer on it. They actually look great. They look great. So that's the inner bolt. Let's go to the other side. You can get that. There it is. All right. The rack feels completely loose now. Let's see if we have enough clearance to pull it all the way out. It was very specific about which way to pull it out. Left hand side. Let's try it. I need to back up a bunch. I know how close that thing gets. Just pull it out, they said. It'll be easy, they said. Looks like you really do have to have it down as far as you can get it, or else the steering shaft, which is sticking up here like another 1.5 inches, just kind of runs into it. I suppose there's any way I can wiggle myself out of this one. The other side's getting caught. Let me loosen it up. You stay here. not like I can break it to get it out because I gotta get a new one in. So, and there's a core on this one, big fat core too. It's like half the price. Let's see if we can get that subframe a little lower. I'll do what I said before. And a little bit like that. Okay, so it actually popped all the way off the body stud. I bet that's gonna suck to go back on. I bet.
With that motor just swinging there.
What?
That motor just swinging.
That one?
The engine.
The engine is swinging?
Yeah.
Like it's moving?
Yeah.
Oh, great, great. Good to know. Don't fall, don't fall. Oh, wow, yeah, you're right, it's just hanging. Oh, that's weird. There's the big fat part of it. You gotta kind of twist it. Tie rod. All right, we're just taking a look at down here with the flex pipe off, which is not in the manual to replace the rack. I'm doing it because it was all torn up, needed to be replaced, but we can get a closer look while it's out. So that's the flange. It looks like there's no gasket there? Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a gasket. It looks like that's a flat surface. I'll explain that more in a minute. Those bolts weren't so bad, but on the Cat they were. Let's see here. These guys were a big problem. One of them I ended up having to cut the end off and use an extractor on. There was barely any nut left because these appear to be, appear to be pressed in. So I didn't want to just cut them off. I left enough of that stud on there that I can put a nut on it. It looks like there is a gasket inside of here. Maybe? I don't know. But anyways, this would also be a good time to replace the carrier bearing for the axle if you need to do that. I'm also doing the sway bar bushings, which there they would be. I don't know what that metal ring is on the sway bar, it's kind of cool, but those studs were in pretty good shape. I PB blasted them first. And per the service manual's request, I am replacing those nuts. I'll show you the parts here in a minute. For taking the rack out, you will need to get the nuts off of this bracket here. So that is relevant. It looks like on top, yeah, some welded nuts there. I'll be putting some anti-seize on those guys when I put it back together. Kind of a cool venting system on the alternator. That's very interesting. I'm not sure if that's sucking in air or blowing air out. I assume it's sucking in air, but not sure. Anyways, I'll get out there and look at the parts, but also here you can see the huge studs coming out of the body. You see I screwed up and I let the rack drop about the subframe drop about 4 inches instead of 3. So you can see the studs have actually slipped out of the holes, and now I've got to figure out a way of getting them back in. So that's gonna suck. Don't make that mistake. And you can see it's already seeping a little bit from the axle seal on the driver's side, which is a really common failure on these cars. But that's a discussion for another day. Let's go look at the parts. Unfortunately, the camera died when we got it all the way out, but you saw the important bits. We got it next to the new reman rack here. It's an A1 Cardone It's got the typical A1 Cardone black paint all over it. It came with a number of warnings. So the one here is saying that the steering rack must be centered with the steering wheel. I gotta look in the manual. It says follow the manufacturer's procedure on that, so I gotta look that up. And what else was I gonna say? Oh, you gotta transfer the outer tie rods. The inners are included. And that part was about, I think, $250 with a core, something like that, a little cheaper than I expected. So here are the flux pipes. Now, what this was causing was that when I went wide open throttle on the car, it would just scream out of the engine bay. Just terrible. Sounded like a header leak, like a huge one. And I believe every time I accelerated, the engine would rock and would open this gap up and just blow exhaust fumes right out in the engine bay. So that's why we're replacing that. There's the new one. It's a Walker part. Got it on Rock Auto. Now I kind of screwed this up because I guess their flanges are different design. One uses a gasket. The new one, this is kind of a flat flange. So I ordered these gaskets, these Velcro gaskets. There's one of the old ones, but it doesn't look like they will go in. As you can see, this old one fit right in that groove there. So probably gonna have to go buy some just standard flange gaskets for those. Here are the new sway bar bushings, which weren't bad. They were actually in pretty good shape, but while you're in there, you should do it because you have to move the rack to get them out. So you'll hate yourself if they go bad later and you didn't do this. There's the part number, although I would take your VIN number to the dealer. And yes, it was cheaper to get these at the dealer than it was to get them online. So that was not on Rock Auto. That's a dealer part. And then I got 4 new nuts, and they were very cheap. They're just little flange nuts. There's that part number. But again, take your VIN to the dealer, and we're replacing some of the nuts for the exhaust, especially the ones that go into the cat. Those, I believe, we determined were a M10 1.5. I wish I could have gotten some flange nuts, but didn't have time. And some washers. Let's see what else is going on. These appear to be, this is definitely the A1 Cardone is obviously just a reman, so it says full Molco right on it. Hopefully it's high quality. The next step up was very expensive. I think it was about $700 for the next one. This was about $250. Wish I could have gotten a nice dealer part, but they were a dealer rack is about $1,100, so that was just not in the budget. Right, here's a part update. So I confirmed there's no gasket where the flange meets the exhaust manifold. The old flex pipe does, but the new flex pipe doesn't. So I went and picked myself up a set of Walter 31337s, and I'm just going to use that. Unfortunately, the catalytic converter flange that's on the car does have a gasket in it, like this style, and I can't get it out. So I will probably just put one of these over on top of it, and if it leaks, I'll just have an exhaust place. Clean that up in the future. Now, this is the U-clamp that goes into this factory bracket here. I went to the parts store and matched it with a clamp, so it's the equivalent of a 2.5 inch clamp. And so you'll just throw this away and just use that in the nuts, and that'll replace that. So when mine came out, even though I got the nuts off, the threads are still a little, I won't focus, but they're still pretty torn up, especially the one on the right there. Okay, so we got the new sway bar bushings in. They need to get torqued to 35 foot-pounds right there. I got the new nuts on there. We cleaned those studs up pretty good with a wire brush, or at least best we could. They should be torqued at ride height. Unfortunately, with the subframe dropped, it's hard to figure out what that is. So with them torqued though, I can move this inside the bushings, so I'm not as worried about it. It's not like binding, and I think that's the important thing. If it was binding and you tightened it at the wrong ride height, then when the suspension settles, it'll tear that bushing up. But because it's spinning in the bushing, I'm not as worried about it. So we're going to try to get the new rack in now. We got the old tie rods off the old rack, but we're not going to put them on this until it's actually in the car, I think. Oh, these things are not light. Haven't done anything to it really. Gotta remember how we got it in there. Or out, sorry. Oh, jeez. There's the 3 bolts we got to put back in, and they should be torqued to 79 foot-pounds. All right, so repair update. Tighten up the bolts on the rack. And I knew I said earlier at some point that it was a pain that we let the subframe drop below these and it cleared them. So that's because I let it drop 4 inches instead of 3. Well, that turned out to be a bigger problem than I thought, even though I knew it was going to be a big problem. We ended up having to place a jack under this subframe bushing and the other one at the same time. And what we would do is we would jack it up so that this stud was kind of pushing on the bushing in there. And granted, I mean, it was the top part. It's up now, but it was kind of applying some force to it. And then I put a shop towel over that stud and I hit it with a hammer, and it would bend the stud enough that it would pop into the hole. And it made a big noise, so we had to put a decent amount of force on the bushing in order to get it to pop in when we hit it with a hammer. Might not be making any sense right now. Basically, trying not to let them clear these studs. That took a lot of time to take care of that. That was a mistake. So now we're going to torque up the 4 subframe nuts. 1, 2, and then 3, 4, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts back here. The ones that go there into that bracket. So getting things buttoned back up here. We've got the 2 bolts back there, 2 bolts back there, and then these 2 big nuts. Once the subframe is in place, you're going to torque these first to 111 foot-pounds, the big nuts, and then you're going to tighten the 4 bolts to 76 foot-pounds. Then you're going to put in the roll restrictor bolt, or the engine mount bolt to 66 foot-pounds. Then you're going to button up the electrical connectors. I still got to connect those. And then you're going to put the aluminum cover back on it and tighten those bolts, those little tiny bolts, to like 133 inch-pounds, but not like you're going to get a torque wrench up in there. Just don't break them off. Alright, so I've got the exhaust bracket bolts and U-clamp bolts in. So as I was saying before, the service manual said to take out the U-clamp bolts and these bolts up here, but I'm still not entirely sure that's necessary. I think the issue is that maybe when you're pulling this out, it hits this. That's kind of what it looks like to me right now. Now, I did the whole flex pipe while I was in there, like I said, so I had a little extra work, but you can interpret this however you like. Anyways, when I started to tighten this side up, it looks like I started to bend this bracket up. Now, the torque rating is only 22 foot-pounds, and I wasn't using a torque wrench, but I'm pretty confident with my little handheld wrench that I was not getting above 22 there. I think it's just real rusted out. See how it's kind of broken up there? So I'm just going to stop there. If you're in a really rusty state, that bracket might need to be replaced. Anyways, these were 22 and these are 22, both. Alright, car's running and driving now. No more power steering warnings. All I had to do was get the tie rods in. They were torqued to the outer nuts were torqued to 35 foot-pounds. I got new cotter pins for that. Couldn't show any of that, unfortunately. I had to get it done ASAP to get it over to the shop because they're pretty backed up, and I got to drive this thing back to Michigan soon. So anyways, I got the outer tie rods in. Like I said, I counted the threads when I took them off so I could get it in as close as I could so the alignment wouldn't be so whack. There's a number of other things that need to be done still. I need to put the underbody skirt on, take the wheels back off, put the side shields there back on, all the little plastic clips. But one of the biggest downsides of this job is that you need to have the computer flashed on the power steering rack. So there's no guarantee it's going to work when you plug it in for the first time. Comes in the box, a big warning comes in the box that says it must be flashed to the vehicle. Unfortunately, I don't have the forward scan tool, obviously, so I hoped for the best. I planned on towing it if that was going to have to be the case, but when I got it all buttoned up, started up the first time, got me no warning messages. I had no problem steering it. So I took it over to the Ford dealer, had them flash the module, which actually turned out to be up to date, but needed to have the vehicle ID put in. So I don't know if that was critical or not. Unfortunately, that was $100. So some of you might have insight on whether or not that was necessary. I wasn't sure. It's not actually my car, so I had to take every precaution. Also, you're going to need to take it in for an alignment. So factor the alignment and the flash into your cost of doing this job. So one of the other things I didn't mention,
See if it's unlocked. You gotta get the lower steering shaft back on. I haven't put the cover on yet, but I bolted the shaft in. Make sure you put the boot in first. Let's see if it's set in there properly. So you gotta make sure that the inner part of the boot is flush over the sleeve of the rack. This bolt gets torqued to 177 inch-pounds, and a warning came with the rack that you need to make sure it's centered before you install it. And as long as the wheels are mostly center, you can't screw it up because the bolt goes through a notch cut in the top of the shaft and the rack. So as long as you have the wheels mostly center and you keep the steering wheel straight, you just move the wheels until it slots right in. The slack will just shink, and then you put that bolt in. I couldn't get my hands on a new one in time, but that's just what the manual said. Let's see what else. So for all you who have the V6, as far as I can tell, the only difference in the manual is that it says to remove the exhaust flexible pipe, and it didn't say to remove the exhaust flexible pipe like U-clamp and bracket. It only said remove the pipe. So I don't know what that entails. This is a 2.5 liter. Also, some of you may have been wondering why the heck I didn't take it in for the recall. Well, at least as up to this point, the 2010 model doesn't have a recall for the power steering. The 11 and 12 did. So that sucked. When I was talking to the shop that quoted it, he said it's a real shame that these weren't recalled for that steering, just because it's so expensive to replace. So this may only be helpful for you guys out there with 2010s. But theoretically, this video should be relevant for 10, 11, and 12s. All right, let's see if I can think of anything else. I think that's about it. Oh, one more thing that I wish I had noticed before. Actually, two things. With the hood open, it appears that there's a little more access than I thought, at least with the 4-cylinder from the top. So you can actually see the some of the rack bolts in the center of the screen there. Some of those are a little tricky to get a torque wrench on. You might be able to have better luck with it through here. And as well as those electrical connectors. So I replaced the exhaust flexible pipe because I thought that it was causing a wide open throttle exhaust leak. The car just screams when you go wide open throttle. I thought it was because the exhaust, or because the flex pipe was torn up. Although the problem has not been fixed. Very disappointing. It sounds like I might either have a cracked manifold or a blown exhaust manifold gasket. That's all for now.